on your iPad, I'd rather that all the iPads are down and that we're just watching, answering questions from me as we go. Eventually, definitely. So, when there are a couple questions in a row that talked about my recording, that talked about name the included angle between, that would give you two lines, the line segments. Anastasia, how do we want to approach that one? All right, what would be? Well, we'll get to that in a second. All right. So it's a name the included angle between JL and JK. So what would the included angle be, Anastasia? This one.
KJL.
It would be KJL. Good. Now this idea of an included angle is important because when we're doing our side angle side proof, we have to have the angle, like in the theorem, side angle then side. The angle that we're using has to be an included angle. Okay? So if we have maybe that this side is parallel or is congruent to that side, and these two sides are congruent, we would have to have that this angle is our angle that we're proving for congruence. It has to be that included angle. It could not be this angle if they tell us that these are the two congruent sides. Now obviously this isn't a great example because we know that KL is congruent to itself, but we just need to make sure that our angle that we're using for side angle side is the included angle. That's why we went through those exercises that we started with. Do we have questions about that? Does that idea of an included angle make sense? It does? We good? Okay.
Go get your chocolate.
What? Decide whether there's enough information. Exercise 9. Decide whether there's enough information to prove that these two triangles are congruent. So remember, we need a side, then an angle, and a side.
Sorry.
Hey, I appreciate you passing stuff out, but can we wait till I'm done? Yeah, so everyone can stay focused. We need to have a side, then an angle, and a side that are congruent. In that order, and our angle needs to be an inclusive or included angle. So what do we think? Someone besides Anastasia, what do we think for this one? Is there enough information to prove that these are congruent? Prove that these two triangles are congruent. Yeah. Why? Because what? Well, that tells us that
It's literally a rhombus. Just cut it in half.
it tells us that these are congruent.
Yeah.
Remember, we
and
need a
the
side,
angles are the
angle,
same.
side. And these angles are the same. This is true. And then also this third, the second side would be congruent to itself, right? The problem is, and that's exactly what they want you to think, the problem is we don't have a side and then the inclusive angle with our side. So if we're looking at this one, there actually is not enough information. And the reason for that would be the angle that they tell us is inclusive. Or the angle that angles they tell us are congruent are not those inclusive angles that we talked about last time. They're not the inclusive angles. All right, if we had to rate ourselves, 0 through 5, 5 being I can teach this, 0 being I need to rewind back to before the lesson yesterday, where would we be at with this idea so far? All right, let's see it. 0 through 5. 0 being I need the lesson again yesterday. Well, Kaylee, you don't count.
Kaylee, you don't.
Okay, Layla, Anastasia, Emma, Arissa, where are we at?
We're good. I'm good.
Elma's not good.
What? Number wise, where would we be?
No, what did he say?
He stopped teaching.
Where would you be?
You're
0
gonna
through 5.
next time. At least like calm
Go
down.
get it, Anastasia.
Which finger?
Where would you be? 0 through 5. Emma,
How well do you know it?
where would you be? 0 through 5.
I'd be like a 3.
A 3 or 4?
Just steal Emma's.
Okay, Carissa? Where would you be?
Yeah.
What number? 0 through 5.
You're welcome, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Sawyer, what do you think?
I get 2.
2? Okay. So we got a couple more to look at. The big thing, like we said, we're trying to use side angle side.
I even gave you a heads up.
Within 1.5 seconds before the
Hey, part of the reason we're not getting this is because we're not really listening. We're not really focusing in. So if we want to understand and not be frustrated with what's going on, then I suggest paying attention.
I won't do nice snapper again, guys.
If we look at exercise 13, eyes up on the board. So we got this next one. Decide whether there's enough information to prove that those two triangles that we have are congruent using our side angle side. So again, we need a side, then that inclusive angle, and then another side.
So no.
Why not? With this picture. Why or why not?
That's the one thing.
The inclusive angle's not in the right spot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anastasia, what do you think?
Yes, because it actually does have a side angle.
Right, a side angle side. In this case, I like the way you guys are thinking. In this case, the inclusive angle would be in the correct spot because we have our congruent sides, and then this middle line would be our other side, and the angle is between our congruent sides. So it's that inclusive angle.
But that's literally the same one as last time, just flipped.
Well, it's very similar,
How is it?
but last time we had our congruent side. Our congruent sides, we had a one side, two sides, and then the angle. The angle was not the inclusive angle. If we look at AD and BD, the inclusive angle would be right here. And they don't tell us that that angle is congruent. So we do not know that side angle side
Oh, okay.
proves
That's
anything.
the
It has to be between our two sides that are congruent. Yep. In this case, they tell us that these two sides are congruent here and here. Obviously, FH is congruent to itself, and then our congruent angle is in between our two sides, connected to our two sides. Does that clear things up a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. So now if we put it all together in a proof, I know these ones, I was talking with someone in third hour. These had way too many options to put into the blanks, right?
Oh,
There were 3 blanks and there was probably like 10 squares to put in.
I was like,
Yeah, I agree. Way too many options. If I could have adjusted it, I would have made the 3 squares with like 6 options or 5 options or something. But that's just not how it works. So, but I do like the question. I like that they give you some things and you have to give reasons for it. So, if we were looking at this one, give the reasons for the proof. They start off with the given that AB is congruent to CD, which shows in the picture. AB is parallel to CD. Great. We need to prove these triangles are congruent. So the statement that they start out with just works with the given, right? It restates the given. That's the first thing we said we want to do with these proofs, is just restate what they've already told us. Now, if we're big picture, if we're trying to use side angle side to prove that these triangles are congruent, does the given help us with any of that? Does the given check either a side, an angle, or a side off our list? A side. Yep, it tells AB is congruent to CD. So we already have proven that one side, or one pair of sides are congruent. Now the statement that they give is AC is congruent to CA, so that this middle line is congruent to itself. What property property that we've talked about a few times now helps us with that. Yep. Reflexive property. Now, did that help us prove a side or an angle?
That's a size.
AC is congruent to AC. Those are two line segments. That just helps us prove another side. That's all right. I like that you're throwing stuff out there, Taylor. Tells me you're trying to participate. Now they say that angle 1 over here is congruent to angle 2. How would we know that? What?
If they connect to the size of the
What? It's a certain property or theorem that we've talked about. And it has to do with AB being parallel to CD. So let's think. If AB is parallel to CD, then they keep going. And then they are cut by this transversal. Are you following with me? So what relationship, if this was a transversal, because they tell us it's parallel lines, that's why they tell us that, because they can help us with these angles. If this was a transversal, what types of angles, or what relationship would 1 and 2 have? Anastasia? They would be alternate interior angles. Yep, because they're on separate sides of that line that cuts the transversal, and they're on the inside of our parallel lines. So since we have alternate interior angles, then we can say that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. That's when when they give us in the given, when they tell us that two lines or line segments are parallel to each other, that's a big hint that we're probably going to use one of those angle relationships. Alternate interior, alternate, well, we probably won't use alternate exterior very much, but corresponding or one of those things, that's a huge hint when we see that we have parallel lines. So we should pay attention to that. So now we have a side, another side, we have our angle. So now at the end, we can conclude that ABC is congruent to CDA because we proved that they have side, angle, side because of the theorem we looked at yesterday. So at the end, we're just stating, we're kind of building our case with the statements and reasons using side, angle, side. And at the end, we're just saying, hey, we can say these are congruent because we just used side, angle, side. Questions? Right. Those were the only ones from yesterday I wanted to look at. There's not a practice, do it on your own before you start on the worksheet. I just will